Hello friends! Welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today we are going to talk through my top 10 fantasy standalones. A couple of weeks ago I did a video where I looked at the top 10 fantasy books of the 21st century, which was a Reddit post that someone had made where people posted their top 10 fantasy books, and I looked through it to see if my tastes align, how many I'd read, how many I hadn't read. I will link it in the description if you guys are interested in going to see how I did compared to the interwebs. But I did ask if you guys would be interested in my list. Now, when I asked that, I didn't think about the fact that I have so many fantasy books that I have read, and so I actually have decided to split mine into two separate lists. So I am going to do a top 10 fantasy standalones of the 21st century and a top 10 fantasy series of the 21st century. And so this is the standalone list. And I will tell you that my standalone list was a lot easier to do than my series list because I have read so many more series. I really don't have a ton of standalones that I have read in the 21st century or beyond the 21st century, or I guess before the 21st century. So it was a little easier to make this list. That doesn't mean that there aren't some books or aren't some standalones that are absolutely amazing that didn't make the list, but I do think I have a pretty good grouping, and I think that the standalones that I'm picking up definitely show that I'm more of a cozy reader than I thought I was. I am going to start from 10 and work my way down to 1. The bottom two I don't own yet. I do have plans to add them to my collection, but I haven't done so yet. So it will be in the future. I will have these in my collection. My number 10 spot goes to Kakai by Vaishnavi Patel. And while I don't own that particular book, I do own Goddess of the River, which I specifically purchased this because I liked Kakai so much, and I just haven't had a chance to purchase Kakai yet. And I haven't read this one yet, but I am excited to. If you guys haven't heard of Kakai, it is an Indian mythology retelling following the story of Kakai. And I honestly don't know the origin story or the mythology to go along with it, but I'm pretty sure Kakai was originally written as a villain. And so when you are reading through the storyline of her decisions, you get to be in her perspective and you get to know why she made the decisions that she did. The general premise is that she is in a kingdom, she's the daughter of a king, and he ends up quote unquote selling her off to another kingdom to make political ties, and she has to figure out a way to get her freedom back. She does have the ability to change or impact emotional ties to her using a specific type of magic that was really intriguing to read about. This story is heartbreaking and it will make you mad for her, and I thought it was so well written, and your heart bleeds for Kakai, and I want to reread the story. It's amazing. My number 9 spot is actually a newer read, and that's honestly why it got the number 9 spot. I don't know if I would put it higher. I'm gonna wait until, maybe the frequency or the recency bias wears off a little bit, because I am really excited about this book because it is a recent read, and that is Strange Beasts. I will preface this with saying that this might eventually be a series. It is a newer release. It came out this year, and it has a potential. I'm not saying that the book ends on a cliffhanger or anything. There's not, I don't think that I think you could read this as a standalone. It would be perfectly fine, and it is listed as a standalone on Goodreads. But I also think there's a lot of potential for this author to take the detective duo that is in this series and expand upon the series as well, which I would love to see. But right now it's a standalone, so it gets my number 9 spot. In this, you follow Sam Harker and Hel Moriarty, who is the daughter of Professor Moriarty from the Sherlock Holmes series. And Sam she is connected to Van Helsing. She has connections via her family in some things that went on with Dracula, and you get to learn about that throughout the book. She has this ability where she can channel monsters in a way, and it does help her be really successful at researching monsters, because that is the institute that she is working at. They study monsters, and so she is one of their researchers. They also have monster hunters, which is what Hell is, and there are a whole bunch of gruesome murders that are happening in Paris, and Hell and Sam get put together to go and investigate these murders in Paris, and you get to follow their investigation. It was a lot of fun. I loved the dynamic between the two of them. It also was really quick paced. The monsters that are involved in the story have some that I'd never heard of before, but you also have some that are classics. And it also is, I think, a really good modern rendition on Sherlock Holmes detective fiction. I thought the mystery was a lot of fun to follow. The next book that I do have to say that some people will probably argue that this is a series, but I would say that this book in particular is a standalone. So this is The Goblin Emperor. This can be read just in one, well, I don't want to say one setting because it is chunky, but you can read this and not continue on. It does have a companion series, which is The Witness for the Dead, The Grief of Stones. There's also a couple of short stories that you can listen to, but all of these follow the character Thara Kelleher, which is the Witness for the Dead. And in The Goblin Emperor, you are following Maya, who is the Emperor. And while they are connected because they're in the same world, you can read this and not continue on with The Witness for the Dead or The Grief of Stones and be perfectly fine. All of the story is wrapped up here. I think that this is a standalone novel. And Goodreads itself is a little confused because if you click on this book, it will put these two books along with it in the series. But then when you click on these, it doesn't include this because these are the Cemetery of Alamo. And this is like the Chronicles of Azeroth, which doesn't actually have any books in it. So anyway, it's my list and I'm saying that this is a standalone. So if you have not heard of The Goblin Emperor, this follows Maya, who is a half-goblin, and he is the 5th or 6th son of the Emperor, who has been removed from kingdom politics since he has been born because of the fact that he's a half-goblin and because he has a lot of he is further from the throne than his brothers, and so his brothers have gotten priority when it comes to education and being involved. However, one day, his father and his brothers are all killed in kind of suspicious circumstances, and Maya is thrust onto the throne, and he has to figure out how to run this kingdom that he's never been taught how to run. It is a story that is full of politics, but it's also full of love and him kind of being lost. It's a story of trying to find friendship whenever you also know that you have power over people and you have to be careful with how you use that power and you can't let people influence you in one way or another. I just absolutely love this. It was cozy, even though it is political fantasy, and I want more people to read it. It's absolutely fantastic. Number 7 on my list is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. This is a middle grade following a boy named Bod, whose parents are murdered at the very beginning of the book, and he escapes. He's a toddler at the time, or an infant who can walk. And he does escape the house to the local graveyard, and the inhabitants of the graveyard, ghosts and all, decide to take care of him. And so you follow his story of being raised by all these creatures in the graveyard. It's so cozy and creepy at the same time, if you can be that. The darker tones of the book mesh perfectly with the sweeter found family themes, and I just absolutely loved it. I haven't been able to find its match. I love the contrast of the dark with the sugary sweetness of some of the relationships that you find in the story, and I would like to find that in other books. The next book I have for you guys was actually one that I read this year, and that is The Book of Doors. I couldn't help but put this on my list. This book, as I was reading it, felt like it was written for me. It is cozy and dreamy, and it has themes of grief and healing that I really like to see in books. If you haven't heard me rant and rave about this, you follow Cassie in this, who is a bookshop worker, and she has a conversation with an older man at the very beginning of the book who ends up passing away in the bookshop, and she has to call an ambulance and have them come in and help her with this man. And he leaves her a gift, and it is a gift of the Book of Doors. And she finds out that this book allows her to travel through any door and get to any place in the world. And you get to follow her experiences with the travel, but also the nefarious side of having a book like this in her possession. I just absolutely loved it. More people should read it, and it should win the Goodreads Choice Awards. It probably won't, but it should. It's a debut author as well. So, okay, top 5. Number 5 on my list is Piranesi. This is a book I talk about constantly when I'm talking about books that I wish I could read for the first time again, because I was so enamored with the house in this book and figuring out why Piranesi was cataloging everything, and it completely immersed me in the world of Piranesi, and I loved the beauty of the small things in this storyline. If you haven't heard of Piranesi, I don't really want to tell you a ton about the book because you really just have to go into it without knowing much. You follow a character named Piranesi who is living in a house that is massive, it's without end, and as he travels around this massive house, he tells you about the different locations in the rooms that he goes to, and the fact that there are oceans within this house. And you also meet another character along the way, and yeah, you get to explore it with him. You get to be in this world and just follow him to figuring out what's going on. Number 4 on my list is another middle grade. I'm surprised that 2 middle grades made my list, but both of them definitely live in my heart, so I think they're well deserving. This one is The Girl That Drank the Moon, and in this, if you haven't heard of this, you follow 2 main characters, Zan and Luna. Zan is a witch who has lived in the woods for a really long time, and she has noticed that every single year around a certain village in the woods, a baby will be abandoned. And so she has made it her mission that every year she goes to this particular place in the woods and takes the baby and takes care of it, brings it to other places to be taken care of. And you learn as a reader very early on in the book that the village thinks that the witch in the woods is demanding sacrifice, and so they give up one of their children every year. And within this, within Zan trying to take care of Luna, you realize that Zan has made a mistake and gives her moonlight, which makes Luna magic. And so it makes the circumstance of taking care of Luna a little bit more difficult than it has the other children that Zan has taken care of, and you get to see their relationship bloom throughout the story, and it's so sweet. The bog creature in this too is absolutely phenomenal. The side characters are just, yes, please. Yeah, more of this. Number 3 on my list is a Tea Kingfisher, which is Thornhedge. I will tell you, I don't think I had to say anything with any of the other books that I've picked so far, but with this one, Tea Kingfisher, I did make a rule that I could only feature an author once on my list. And so Tea Kingfisher had so many standalones that I wanted to put on this list, but this one won out over all of them. I absolutely love Tea Kingfisher's writing and will continue to pick up anything they write. But this one in particular, you follow Toadling, who is actually pictured in the beginning here. I absolutely love it. So Toadling is a fae-like creature who has been tasked with watching this tower, which, if you haven't heard much about this, this is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, but it is a dark Sleeping Beauty retelling. So you don't know why she's watching this tower, and she stands sentry. She's essentially telling you along the way her story of why she's here. You get to know a little bit about her backstory, and you also get to see people come along who want in the tower and what she does to try and prevent that. I love Toadling. She has my heart, and I would totally take a spin-off series of this. I don't think it will happen, but of seeing her backstory or even her future, if we can do that, it's great. The second book on this list is another author that I have read multiple times, but this is definitely my favorite work of theirs, and that is The Magician's Daughter by H.G. Perry. Oh, this book. I need to reread this at some point in time. Actually, I need to reread all of the books on this list because they're all fantastic, but I think about this one often. In this book, you follow a girl named Biddy who lives on a magical island. And Biddy has been taken in by the magician Rowan. The world outside of this island does not have magic, or when it does, it's very limited in capacity and it's only available to the very privileged people. And Biddy has no idea because she's never left this island. She's been raised here by Rowan and his familiar, and he leaves the island every night. And she begs him to take her with him, and he doesn't want to because he wants to protect her. But one night, Rowan doesn't come home, and so Biddy has to make a decision on what to do to try and help him, or does she stay on the island and wait for him to come back? And you get to follow her choices and actions with that decision. This, once again, has found family vibes. I loved the development of Biddy throughout the book. The fact that she is this very sheltered girl who is seeking independence in the beginning of the book, and once she gets it, she doesn't quite know that she wants it. It's so relatable, and the relationship between between Rowan and his familiar in this is immaculate. I would just eat this up. I would read this every day. And my number one spot goes to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I thought when I first read this and fell in love with this novel that it was only by chance, it hit me at the right time, that it was going to be something that would wear off. And it stuck with me like glue. I recently reread it in December of last year. So it's been about a year since I've reread it. And I loved every minute of my reread. This will be a book that I continue to come back to time and time again. I love this story. If you haven't heard of this, you follow Addie, who at the very beginning of the story, you realize is going to be forced into a marriage that she doesn't want. She wants to be free, and she wants to live a life that she leads and that no one gets to make decisions for her. And so she ends up making a deal with a dark figure to get out of this marriage. Well, that makes it to where she has eternal life. So she actually can live forever. But the deal is that when she lives forever, no one will actually remember who she is. So as she is talking to people, as soon as they turn to face a different direction or leave the room that she is in, they forget who she is entirely. And so this story is about her life and how she deals with this. It also has themes of legacy and love and what it means to be loved, what it means to be remembered, why it's important. Oh my gosh, I fall in love every time I even think about this book. It is absolutely fantastic. I know it's not for everybody. It is very slow. It's very meandering. And I know that there are certain pieces of the magic that have some plot holes. But I don't care. I just love it. I can't not love it. It's amazing. So this is my top of the list for my standalone fantasy books. So that is my top 10 list of fantasy standalones. Remember to stay tuned for my top 10 series, which is probably quite a bit more controversial. It was definitely harder for me to make. And let me know what you think about my list in the comments down below. Do you agree with my choices? Have you read any of these books? Do you have a list of your own? I would love to chat with you guys. If you aren't feeling chatty, leave me either a star emoji or like that glitter emoji for my dreamlike state whenever I think of any of these books. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.